Hello Reloaders! Welcome to part 2 of the Super Trickler What's New in the version 2.40 upgrade. In this episode, we are going to be concentrating on the changes to the profile, looking at the settings, functionality and features. Let's start out with what has changed on the main profile screen. We have added a sub-menu button called More Settings, and moved the tolerance and final stabilization buttons into the new sub-menu. However, for convenience, the tolerance and final stabilization details remain displayed on the main profile screen. The only other changes to this screen are the addition of the scholar's hats for each of the instruments where self-learning applies and is active. A yellow hat means the instrument has not started learning. A green hat means the instrument is in the learning stage. And a purple hat for when the instrument is just being monitored by the self-learning system. Let's look at the More Settings sub-menu. In here, you will find our old friends, the tolerance offset, and the final stabilization time. Along with some new controls, a simple profile mode, and 3 completion stop buttons. Let's examine firstly, the simple profile mode option button. When we first start looking at the profile, it's easy to become overwhelmed by the number of settings and apparent complexity. However, most of the time, most of the settings do not need to be changed. So the simple profile mode can be turned on, and this will disable many of the buttons and settings throughout the profile sections, not generally required, unless you are a power user. Next on the list is the 3 completion stop buttons. If you are a power user, and you are trying to optimize the system for speed or for reliability, then these buttons can be used to stop or cancel the charge, once the selected instrument has completed its part of the powder drop. By doing this, you can examine the dynamics of a single instrument, and the settings can then be fine-tuned to suit your needs. You can turn on more than one of the completion stop buttons. However, it will stop at the end of the first instrument used with the stop button selected. We said in part 1, when it comes to the profile, you are going to have to throw out all your prior knowledge. So now let's look at each instrument and see what's changed, starting at the top with the bulk. There are 3 changes. We have added the ability to turn off, instrument by instrument, the in-flight tracking. This is not recommended, however it gives you the ability to control the in-flight settings without interference from the AI. Next, is the expected in-flight value. This will be dramatically higher than in previous versions, so don't be shocked by an amount you did not expect. Finally, we have added a turn-off soft key to the speed setting. Pressing this will turn off the bulk instrument. Should you require the bulk again, simply press the speed key, and your original speed will be ready for you to select. Next down the list is the fine instrument. There are 6 changes to this page. Firstly, we have rearranged the layout to make room for the in-flight tracking option button. The functionality is the same as the one for the bulk instrument. Likewise, we have also added the turn-off option on the high speed setting. And again, like the bulk, you will find the in-flight values a little higher than in previous versions. Now, with the vibrator motor running on an idle speed, keeping movement energy in the kernels, you can expect the low speed setting and ramp down to be a little bit more sensitive. The last change is that the AI might now set the ramp down value, based upon that characteristics it measured during the bulk drop. Now, let's look at the slow instrument. We have only a few changes. The in-flight tracking button, just like the other instruments. The turn-off button, on the speed setting, also like the others. Higher in-flight values as well. And finally, increased sensitivity on the speed, just like the fine instrument. Now the pulse instrument. The pulse instrument profile has only 4 changes. However, much of the version 2.40 work has been involved with this instrument, with a focus on difficult powders like Varget. Firstly, the high speed limit has been dropped, and replaced with a dithering strength selection. It ranges from off to very strong, normal, weak, very weak, and off. If you find the powder delivers at the start, but then stops, it may need some dithering to overcome the formation of standing waves. The next addition is the pulse idle speed. Do not confuse this with the vibration motor continuous operation idle. The value can be set to off, or a range from 1% up to the pulse speed setting. The idea behind this control is to give you the ability to keep the powder moving in the vibrating tube, but not enough to dispense powder. This is similar to the vibrating continuous operation idle speed. However, the pulse idle is just within the powder dispensing range, but if set low is unlikely to deliver any powder. For some powders this control is a game changer, and for others it can be problematic, especially if the kernels are very resonant. It's a matter of trial and error. As with the dither control, it depends on the flow characteristics of the powder. Stubborn powders can really benefit from the pulse idle speed, and if the powder seems impossible to control, then I would consider turning the pulse idle to off. The final new control is the enable ramping. If turned on, rather than the pulse jumping from the idle speed to the pulse speed, resulting in a jolt, the ramping will smoothly ramp the speed up over the pulse time period. Just a note, at this point, normally if the pulse off time is very short, the resulting jolt to pulse speed can result in a strong burp of powder. However, by using the ramp, this jolt is reduced and shorter off times may be achievable with some powders. Finally, the last of the changes are in the self-learning system. 2 new features have been added. Just like on the main profile screen, the self-learning status is now shown for each instrument. The next feature is the ability to reset individual instruments. So if you find that an instrument has not learned very well, rather than resetting the entire profile, you can now reset the problematic instrument while leaving the others in their current state. Well, that's it for Part 2, covering all the changes to the profile. In Part 3, we will be looking at the Super Trickler general feature changes. So until next time, straight shooting and happy reloading, from Rex and Peter.